Hi, my name is Kati Migliaccio. I'm an associate professor in the Agriculture and Biological Engineering Department, and I'm housed at the Tropical REC in Homestead. This presentation is a short refresher on water quality law and implications for agriculture. Water quality really evolved during the 20th century and continues to be refined. Originally dealing with disasters such as water burning in Cleveland, and then moving more toward problems with algal bloom, these concerns are translated into laws to protect our water quality supplies. The primary reason for doing this is so that these water resources can be used for their designated uses, such as drinking water, irrigation, and recreation. The most comprehensive water quality law to date is the Clean Water Act of 1972. And it had a very ambitious goal of restoring waters considering their chemical, physical, and biological integrity. This was a very tall order, and to do this, what they identified as the steps were to identify polluted or impaired water bodies using a set of criteria. And once these criteria were not met, they would be considered impaired. These impaired water bodies would then be evaluated to see what type of load of a certain pollutant they could receive and still meet their designated uses. This idea of a total load is known as the total maximum daily load, or the TMDL. And while that might seem a little simplified, it is a pretty complex process because each water body is different. Each water body has different natural sources of pollutants. Each water body has different sources as far as agriculture or urban or municipal sources of pollutants. So it is a very complex problem, and there's no one solution that will fit all different water bodies. Because of the complexity of this idea, few of these water quality measures were actively enforced. And this led in the 90s to an era of lawsuits where many different entities sued states and the EPA on their failure to really implement this idea. Florida was no exception to this. There were different parties that stood with Earth Justice and filed a lawsuit in 2008. And they claimed that EPA and FDEP were moving too slowly in Florida, that EPA previously determined that all states needed numeric nutrient criteria, and the EPA was obligated to propose these criteria for Florida as soon as possible. The result of this lawsuit was that EPA administrator signed a proposed rule, and this rule was called the Water Quality Standards for the state of Florida's lakes and flowing waters. This rule applies to everyone. It applies to industries, to wastewater treatment plants, cities, municipalities, agriculture producers, urban landscape managers, basically anybody that contributes some sort of load to a water body. And what this rule means is that there will be numeric concentrations for nitrogen and phosphorus that will be assigned to each water body in the state of Florida. If these are exceeded, the water body would be listed as impaired, and as we discussed a couple slides ago, a TMDL would be required. And that's where this gets a little complicated in how these different contributing sources would be allocated loads as part of this TMDL. Here's a visual of how that might be seen. We would identify the main inputs, and an example would be the ag, the residential, the wastewater treatment plant, and industrial inputs. And then there would be some balancing of these inputs to meet a designated load. How these would be balanced would depend on how the regulators felt this would be done impartially. So it's important to be part of this process so that there's good understanding of the practices already in place by these different sources and the different goals that want to be achieved in the TMDL process. there's already some measures that ag producers do that really are in the same idea as the Water Quality Act and the TMDL process. So ag producers should not panic. In 1999, the Florida Watershed Restoration Act was passed, and this provided a way for producers to meet these water quality goals through the FDACS BMP program, or the Best Management Practice Program. And through this program, producers who file a notice of intent and implement appropriate BMPs are presumed to comply with water quality standards. This is a great program that's provided by FDACS, and there's many people at IFAS that help support the BMP portion of this program. Because of the evolution of this law and the continual development and refinement of the standards, it is critical to be involved in the process so that the criteria, the impairment identification, and the TMDLs that are developed are based on science and that they make sense. So if you are part of a party that might be contributing to a source or be evaluated as a potential contributor, it's important to be involved in the process through your grower organizations such as Farm Bureau or FNGLA or others, and to also just keep aware of what's happening so that you can be part of the process and help to make a good law that really does protect our water resources while at the same time helps to sustain agriculture. The FDACS BMP program is very well outlined on their website. You can search for FDACS BMPs and come across it. The different manuals based on commodities can be found there. If you're interested in this program but you're not quite sure how to get involved, you can contact Kevin Hancock or Dr. Brian Bowman. You could also contact your local county extension service and they'll have information on this program. There are many people out there that will help you. If you're unable to get help from these sources, you can also contact myself. Just to see where the program is, these are slightly old statistics. I think they're a year old or so, but you can see the number of acreage and the number of growers that have signed up for this program. So there's quite a bit of involvement, although we hope to get more producers in this process, mainly because a lot of producers already have in place these best management practices, yet they haven't signed their notice of intent and therefore are not part of the protection program through FDACS. So, you know, it's good to at least know what the practices are and to see how many of those practices you're already doing and could possibly already be part of this process. If you're interested in becoming part of it and there's new BMPs you'd like to implement, there is funding available for that through EQIP, or the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. EQIP typically funds these programs on an annual basis. Some popular practices include upgrading sprinkler systems, synthetic mulch, decommissioning of open, unused wells, and there's many other practices. Here's two websites. One website lists the different specifics on EQIP. The second website will give you information on the NRCS offices in the state of Florida. There's other really nice resources out there on water quality law and some of the BMP programs. EDIS is a great place to find that. EDIS is an online information resource provided by IFAS, and extension agents and extension specialists publish on this website information that would be of interest to our clientele. There are several EDIS on here specifically related to this water quality law and water quality nutrient criteria. I strongly urge you to look at those resources because they explain things in a way that we can understand things and it answers the specific questions that you might be interested in. Our County Extension Service is also a great resource on this topic, and the UF IFAS Research and Education Centers. The IFAS website provided here lists the different research and education centers and county extension offices. In case you're not familiar with them in your area, you can go to this website and find the closest one to you. And here is my email address in case you have problems or you'd like to talk to me more about this topic. IFAS is very involved in this process and will continue to support science-based decisions to preserve our natural resources and support sustainable agriculture. Thank you for listening.